Hey, I'm Reza Farhin. Thanks for clicking on this video. So today, I decided to film something a little different for you all. I wanted to start doing a haunted slash weird hospital story series alongside my skincare content. I want to start off by saying that this was inspired by Robert Welsh. I was about to call him Sir Robert Welsh. Robert Welsh, the makeup artist here on YouTube. He does weekly ghost stories on his channel where he reads ghost stories and weird paranormal stories submitted by his subscribers while doing a makeup look related to something weird and gory and creepy and scary. This isn't something I talk about a lot. I love anything paranormal, haunted, spiritual, ghostly, scary, creepy, all of that. Particularly, I love stories involving insane asylums and like mental hospitals, mental institutions, facilities. I've had a love for psychology since I was a kid, and I'm currently in school to be a mental health counselor. I'm currently working in the field as well. So I have a soft spot for hospital horror stories or weird abandoned hospitals with really weird histories behind them. I'm gonna do some skin prep while I talk. I already reapplied my sunscreen about 10 minutes ago. I gave it a moment to sink in, and I'm going to go in with the Milk Hydro Grip Primer. I remember reading about Bedlam Hospital in the UK, which was England's first mental institution. I don't remember what year, but it was the country's first one. I remember reading about it in English class junior year, and I've been kind of hooked on it ever since. Again, the idea of creepy hospitals, patients going insane, the general treatment of patients and how mental health was viewed back then in like the old days. It's always been really fascinating to me. And it's also probably the reason why I love The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman so much, and other related stories like it as well. Going with the Ordinary Coverage Foundation in the shade 2.1Y. I decided to do this series because in between starting school and starting a new job and trying to plan like educational skincare content for you all, I've been very stressed. I've been super duper stressed about it all, and oh, this is so dark. Okay, whatever, it's fine. It's fine. And given the heavy nature of counseling, it kind of starts to take a mental toll, and I just needed to decompress. And what better way to do that than talk about haunted hospitals? A little weird, I know, but again, I love I enjoy the folklore, I enjoy the mystery, the theories, the spiritual messiness behind these historic institutions, and anything involving the insane and or like the hysteria from like long ago. This has always been fascinating to me. So I just wanted to do something lighthearted and have a little chat about these weird hospitals and institutions with you all every week, or as often as I can. I don't know. Again, this was inspired by Robert Welsh on YouTube and his weekly ghost stories. All the credit goes to him. And if there's anybody else doing something similar regarding hospitals and asylums, please let me know. I'm not trying to steal your thunder or your shine or anything. I'm just kind of doing this for fun because this is something I've always enjoyed reading about. And again, just being a counselor myself, just the history behind mental health and treatment in real life, in literature, has always just been really cool to me. So just zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing on my eyes. I put a little bit of the Ordinary Serum Foundation in the shade 2.0 YG under my eyes. I don't know if you could really see it on camera, but it's there. Painterly paint pot in soft ochre that I'm gonna put on my eyes real quick to prime. So for episode 1, I wanted to talk about Creedmoor Psychiatric Center, I can't say that word, which is still an active facility right here in Queens, not too far from where I live. It's in the Queens Village area, I believe. It overlooks Alley Pond Park, and we drive by it all the time, actually. It's pretty close to me. So this opened up in 1912 as a farm colony for the Brooklyn State Hospital. And farm colonies were this thing that started to pop up in the 1900s with the belief that fresh air and nature and the outdoors would help heal your mental issues. Anybody who was mentally insane, anybody who had a problem or an issue would be cured with fresh air. Anybody who had any mental issues would be cured if they were taken away from the busy urban life and placed in an area that was a little more rural, a little more close to nature. Farm colonies used nature to heal and rehabilitate their patients. These patients were too mentally ill to function in society on their own. Before I begin, I'm going to be using the Tropicana palette from Jayco Cosmetics. It's this gorgeous rainbow palette. It's a Black-owned beauty brand. The palette is stupid pigmented. I am going to recreate my Eid look using this palette. I did it all with this palette and this little L'Oreal shimmer shadow here. I was using a rainbow palette from another brand. I'm going to name names. And it was a cute palette, but then I received this in the mail on the day of Eid. Why not try out my look with this palette, give this palette a test run? And I put this green, this dark green here in the crease, and I screamed, like I yelled by how much pigment was on my eyelids, because the other rainbow palette from the other brand wasn't giving me any of that. So incredible rainbow palette from Jayco Cosmetics. I do have a discount code, which I will link down below in the description box for 15% off. I'm going to be recreating my Eid look. I'm going to go in with this yellow shade here, Sunshine. So back to Creedmoor. Eventually, Creedmoor and a lot of other psych hospitals around that time began to be overcrowded, began to become really overcrowded. And because of this, patient abuse and neglect was really common. In the 1970s, it got really bad at Creedmoor. I also want to mention that before Creedmoor Psych was a thing, in the 1800s, it was like a firearms ground for like the NRA. And they would have like these gun shooting competitions and stuff like that. And in the 1900s, New York State bought back the deed to the land because people were complaining about the noise from the guns and stuff like that. And then in 1912, Creedmoor Psych opened up, and the whole area became a hospital. Like I mentioned, as Creedmoor became more overcrowded, abuse started becoming more common, neglect, fights between the nurses and the patients, between the patients themselves, especially the particularly violent ones. In the 1970s, it got really bad. And there were reports of like rapes and assaults and like arson. People were setting things on fire. I think it was building 74 that housed the most violent patients. And that's, I guess, where the hospital had the most destruction, in building 74. And one particular incident at Creedmoor, which made the news, was the death of Robert Venegas. Venegas? Yeah. He was a Colombian immigrant who was at Creedmoor for having paranoid schizophrenia. And he was admitted, I think, a total of 3 times. The last time being he overdosed on a medication or something, and he got sent to Creedmoor for treatment. So I'm going to go in with Toucan, this darker green right here. On March 5th, 1984, Venegas got rocked in the throat with a blackjack by a nurse and died from asphyxiation. While Venegas was confined in a straitjacket. And can you see that? I don't know, filming on my phone. Trying my best. According to the New York Times, this is actually the 17th time a patient has been attacked by an employee at Creedmoor. Again, like I mentioned, since the 70s, Creedmoor has been experiencing a lot of violence between nurses and patients. And all these attacks on these 17 patients have been on patients who were either confined in a straitjacket or being put into or taken out of a straitjacket, which is really interesting to me because obviously if you're in a straitjacket and not allowed to have mobility, you are at your most vulnerable, I guess. So if I was a psycho killer nurse, I would take the opportunity to attack a patient in that moment too. So interesting. I'm going to go on with ocean right here, this dark blue. So obviously Creedmoor has had a long history of violence and abuse. I haven't seen or read anything about the hospital being haunted, but they do have a few abandoned buildings, most notably Building 25. Building 25 was abandoned in the 70s during, that violent period in the hospital's history, and it was never sold off or demolished. What's the wrong color? I think I used azure last time when I did the actual look on Eid. Oops. So the building was never sold off or demolished. It was just left to kind of rot on the property. The building, I'm gonna link some blogs down below who of people who have been able to visit the abandoned building. The building is just kind of full of like these artifacts, like old school wheelchairs and other medical equipment and supplies, and surgical tools, medical records, like little diagnoses cards. A lot of the cards have mentioned diagnoses of like schizophrenia, because that was like the most common thing to diagnose people with at the time. And pigeon poop. Lots of pigeon poop. Mountains of pigeon poop. 40 years of pigeon poop have like solidified on top of like the abandoned chairs and buildings and equipment. And on some of the floors, the ground has just become like poop concrete. Look at some of the pictures. You can see that the entire floor of you can see that the ground of some of the floors, like at first glance, you think it's like concrete or something, but it's like, no, it's like 40 years of hard pigeon poop all on the ground. And apparently, if you're exposed to pigeon poop for too long, like you're like constantly breathing it in, there's like some like weird lung disease called bird fancier's disease or something. So if you're ever have to be around bird poop for long periods of time, please be careful, I guess. I'm gonna go in with the L'Oreal Infallible eyeshadow in the shade Golden Emerald. This is what it looks like. I'm gonna put that in my inner this inner part of my lid. So also in the day rooms, on some of these floors where the patients spend kind of like some of their free time, they have these really cool murals that are still kind of intact on the walls. Also, the most interesting about Building 25, apparently there's like an infamous squatter that lives in the building. Like a squatter being somebody who illegally lives in an unoccupied or abandoned building. There's a squatter who lives on one of the floors in the building. Several people who have blogged about going to Building 25 have they've encountered this man who lives there. I think one guy found the man sleeping in a day room, and then another guy found that same man sleeping in like the kitchen, and like all of his belongings are there and stuff. And I think those same bloggers have found like newspaper clippings. Like the guy would like read the newspaper there, and he would have clippings, and the clippings were like very recent. So it's just like, okay, somebody like lives here. Oh, interesting that somebody would, and like I understand squatting. You know, you get to live in an abandoned building for cheap. In building that's like full of pigeon poop. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to New York, but the pigeons here are thugs, okay? The pigeons here are hooligans. This city belongs to them. It belongs to the pigeons. Like, you move out of the way for pigeons when you're walking on the sidewalk, okay? These streets are theirs, not ours. So to want to squat or live in a place that's overrun with pigeons and pigeon poop, and like putting yourself at risk for this bird fanciers disease and like messing up your lungs, it's like, I don't know, of all the places, I don't know, unless like the guy's like friends with the pigeons, like that lady in Home Alone 2. That's also a possibility. I don't know. I'm going to go in with Tropicana, this orange shade right here, and sweep that under my eyes. I was reading about Creedmoor. I saw that there was recently a newer building that was like recently abandoned by the hospital, and it was like a children's daycare center. And this was like recent because like there were like pictures of Obama on the wall, like newspaper clippings of Obama. So I'm still trying to look more into why that particular building was abandoned or like not in use anymore. I don't know. And like anything involving kids and like haunted places and the paranormal is just like automatically creepy, like more creepy than adults. So like looking at the pictures of the abandoned children's ward was like scarier than the adult pigeon poop floors. I don't know, it's just like the toys, and then like there's one picture with like plastic balls that you will find in like a ball pit that they're just like laying around, and like drawings and all these like children's artwork. It was just like, I don't know, creepier than like anything involving an adult. Yeah. So that's it for my little history lesson on Creedmoor Psych. I did the rest of my makeup off camera. I ran out of lash glue, so I just kind of stuck the lashes onto my eyelids. I hope they don't fall off. I'm really looking forward to continuing on with this series. Please give me any recs on haunted or abandoned hospitals or mental institutions that have a history behind them that are worth talking about, or any crazy patient stories, infamous patients in psych history. Please let me know, and I can't wait to do more research on my own and share these little stories and histories with you all. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.